Welcome and good afternoon. This is Commish Orr, and today we are going to finish our How to Play series for Strat-O-Matic. Yes, we're tackling the Super Advanced Game. I've done another video on the basic game and the advanced game, and today we're going to talk about the Super Advanced Game, which is, as the title suggests, super advanced. So, one thing I will mention, I'm not going to rehash things from the prior videos. So this really is part 3 of the series, if you will. So if you want to play the Super Advanced Game and you've never played Strat-O-Matic before, you should watch the first 2 videos before you watch this one. Because I'm only going to be talking about the differences between Super Advanced and the prior games. And the other thing I'll say, Super Advanced is, just as the name suggests, super advanced. There are a lot of little details in the Super Advanced game. So we're going to dive into that. Hopefully I'm going to get everything right, but if I get anything wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I'm 90% sure, 95% sure that I know what I'm talking about, but you know, everybody thinks they know what they're talking about. So, in any event, Super Advanced Game, that is playing with pretty much all of the rules for Strat-O-Matic. All of the noodly little rules in Strat-O-Matic, and there are a lot of them. So, I have the little game board up here. I have a couple sample player cards, and we're going to talk about the differences between Super Advanced and the prior games. And if you're looking through the rule book, following along, I'm going to be going in that order. And the first thing you will come across that is a Super Advanced rule, and in the rule book they're kind of shaded gray, it is in the section on runner advancement on hits. Runner advancement on hits. There are some additional super advanced rules over what we've already talked about. Remember, in the advanced game, there's a cutoff rule where the offensive manager can send a runner, and then the trail runners can try to move up on a play, and the defense gets the chance of either trying to throw for the lead runner or cut off the throw to prevent the trail runner from advancing, and all of that fun stuff. So, you're going to use those rules from the advanced game with these notable differences. Anytime you have the right fielder throwing to third base, you're going to increase the base runner's rating by 2. So, Lou Gehrig here has a running of 1 to 13. If he's running to third base and the throw's coming from right field, it's going to be a +2. On throws from left field to third base, though, you're going to decrease the base runner's rating by 2. So if it's right field, you're going to increase it by 2. Left field, you're going to decrease it by 2, which makes sense because of the positioning of the players. Now, anytime you want to try to move up, or a manager decides to advance a man, usually this occurs on base hits with no asterisks, right? Remember? So if there's a single with no asterisks and you want to try to move from first to third, for example, the defense has the option of trying to throw the runner out at third or cut off the ball to prevent the trail runner from taking the extra base. So it's a choice that you got to make. It's a choice you got to make. And in this case, the trail runner could be the batter. So there's a man on first. There's a base hit to right field, let's say, and it's a single with no asterisks, and you're trying to move that runner from first to third. The defense has a choice to make of whether to try to get that runner out at third or cut the play off and prevent the trail runner, which is the batter in this case, from moving up to second base on the throw. So there are some noodly rules, but I think it's best summed up by the chart there's a chart in the rule book on one of the last pages of the rule book, and it's the Super Advanced Cutoff Rule computation. Okay, that covers all of this stuff. There's a play sequence you got to go through. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and then there are modifications to the chance that the runner is going to be safe, depending on the situation and all of that fun stuff. So first of all, if you have a single with no asterisks and you're trying to take an extra base, or you have a double with no asterisks and you want that lead runner to take an extra base, so like a runner on first, double no asterisks, right? He can try to score on that in that case. In any event, what you're going to do is the offense is going to decide whether to send that lead runner or not. Okay? So step one, offense decides, and maybe they decide that they don't want to even send that lead runner because it's a slow runner, right? Well, then that ends things right there. There's nothing to worry about with cutoffs and all of that because they're not sending the runner anyway, right? But if they decide to send the lead runner, then the defense makes the choice on whether to throw for the lead runner to try to get the lead runner out, or go ahead and let him advance and hold the trail runner from advancing an extra base. That's the defense's choice. Now, if the defense throws for that lead runner, right? So we're going to say single with no stars, runner on first, and he's trying to get to third, and the defense throws to third to try to get the lead runner, then the offense gets to decide whether they want to try to advance that trail runner or not. And again, in this case, the trail runner is the batter. If you look at the chart, let's just read it across. Single, no stars. Situation, runner on first, or it could be first and third, but the guy in third is going to score anyway. The lead runner is that runner on first. The trail runner is the batter, right? So if the defense throws for the lead runner, the offense decides whether they're going to have the trail runner try to advance. And if they do try to advance the trail runner, then the defense can either let the throw go through to try to get the lead runner still, or they can cut off the throw and attempt to throw the trail runner out. And an interesting little note here, keep in mind that if they throw for the lead runner and the offense has decided to have the trail runner try to advance, if the defense throws for the lead runner, the trail runner is going to advance automatically. Likewise, if the defense cuts the throw off to prevent the trail runner from advancing, the lead runner is going to advance automatically. Okay, so automatically there's going to be advancement there if everybody's going. And to compute the chances of success, they have a little formula here. So the lead runner going from first to third, you see as A plus B plus C plus D. A plus B, A is runner speed and outfielder arm. So that's always going to be factored in. Runner speed and outfielder arm. Remember, the outfielder arm is a plus or minus. Okay. If there's 2 outs, you're going to add 2 because they were running on the swing of the bat. If it's hit to right field, you're going to add 2. If it's hit to left field, you're going to subtract 2 on those throws to third base. And the other modifier is if the runner is held. If the runner is being held, you subtract 1. If he's not held, you add 1. That's the A plus B plus C plus D. The trail runner, on the other hand, the only computation for the trail runner on his success is the speed and outfielder's arm minus 5. So you'll notice all of the trail runner computations, there's a minus 5. So it's much easier to try to get that trail runner out. But again, if you do that, then the lead runner is automatically going to advance. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. But you'll notice, as I said, there's a minus 5 on all of the computations for going after trying to throw that trail runner out. A minus 5 on his speed, or running rating, excuse me. There's always a minus 5 on it, regardless of any other modifiers. All right. So this, as long as you look at this chart, you find the result on the left and you follow it over and add or subtract the appropriate things, then that will kind of tell you the chances. So let's look at Lou Gehrig, shall we? Let's look at Lou Gehrig. Now let's say he's trying to move from first to third on a single with no stars. Single with no stars. Okay? He's trying to move from first to third. So running speed is 1 to 13. Let's say the outfielder's arm is a 0. Okay? And let's say there are 2 outs. Okay, so if 2 outs, you're going to add 2. So now it's a 1 to 15. And let's say it's hit to left field. Now it's back down to 1 to 13 because you subtract 2. And let's say he was being held on base. Subtract another one, so it's 1 to 12. So that would be our final running rating to determine whether he's safe or out. Would be a 1 to 12 and you roll the 20-sided die to determine if he's safe or out. The other important note it says, obviously, is if the next base is occupied, then the runner can't be held. So if you have runners on first and second, right? If you have runners on first and second, then you got to keep in mind that, or let's say bases loaded. The base is loaded, lead runner on second, because that runner on third is going to score on a single with no stars anyway. That runner on second can't be held. So then you're not going to modify for the runner being held or not. But in that case, you're going to apply it whether the lead runner was being held or not. Okay? So if the lead runner is held, that modifier applies to the other base runners as well. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so that's how to do the cutoff rules. Basically, just follow the chart. And then find your result, roll the 20-sided die, see what happens. And again, like the Super Advanced, there's a lot of choices to make for the offense and defense and trail runners and all of that fun stuff. But you just come to this chart, look up the appropriate area, and follow the computation, and you should be fine. Let's look at another example. So Lou Gehrig, let's say there's a double with no stars, and Lou Gehrig was on first, and he wants to try to score. In that case, his running rating is 1 to 13. Outfielder arm, let's say it's 0 again. If there were 2 outs, you would add 2 more. Let's say there are 2 outs, so it'd be 1 to 15. And because he's scoring, or trying to score, you also factor in the runner being held. You wouldn't factor in the right field, left field, because that only applies on throws to third base, right? Yeah. So that's how cutoffs go. Now, let's say you're trying to score. And our running rating was, let's say, 1 to 13 with all the modifiers. Let's just, for simplicity's sake, 1 to 13. And you roll a 13 or a 14, meaning you rolled the last number in the safe range or the first number in the out range. And the throw is to home plate. Well, there's a rule for catchers blocking home plate. Catcher blocking the plate. Okay, so if it was 1 to 13 and you roll a 13, then what you would do is you would come to this chart, find the catcher's rating, 1 to 5, and then look to see the safe and the out based on the catcher's rating, because the catcher's blocking home plate. So you look in this little section that's also in the rule book. Okay, so that only occurs again on the last safe number or the first out number is when you would consult the catcher blocking the plate. All right. The other cutoff rule has to do with fly ball B question mark. Okay, remember, fly ball B question mark means that the runner has the choice of trying to score. So let's say runner's on first and third, runner on first and third, and there's a fly ball B question mark. The runner on third has the option of trying to score. So you follow the cutoff play sequence, because if the offense tries to score from third base, the defense decides whether to try to throw that runner out at home or cut the throw off and prevent that runner on first from advancing to second. If they throw for the guy at home, then the offense decides whether they want to try to advance that trail runner on first or not. And if they do, then the defense decides whether to let the throw go all the way to home or to cut it off and try to get that trail runner trying to advance to second. And these computations are a little easier. It's just running speed and outfielder's arm, if the play's at the plate, +2. Running speed, outfielder's arm, +2 for any fly ball Bs with the play at the plate. If you're trying to get the trail runner, well, if the trail runner had been on first, like first and third, then it's running speed and outfielder arm -5. Remember, I said -5 on all the computation for trail runners. Of course, if the trail runner is the guy on second, if it's second and third, then you also add or subtract based on right field or left field. Add 2 for throws from right field to third base, subtract 2 for throws from left field to third base. But the cutoff sequence is the same as the base hits with no stars, singles and doubles with no stars. And these only apply for the fly ball B question mark when there's a choice for that fielder. And again, that only occurs if not only it's a fly ball B question mark, but there's additional runners on base, right? Because if there's just the guy on third, it doesn't matter. There's no cutoff to deal with. There's no cutoff to deal with. It's just the guy on third. All right. The other rule that was added that has to do with outfielders is when there is a home run fly out split on the card. And I believe we have one on here on Gehrig. Okay, a 1-7 on Gehrig is a home run 1-17 or a fly ball right field B 18-20. So if you roll that, and much like the catcher blocking the plate, if it is the last number in the safe range or first number in the out range, so a 17 or 18, there is a chance that the outfielder could rob a home run. And much like the catcher blocking the plate, you would find the handedness of the batter, and then the fielder is determined by, if it's the last number in the home run range, it's either the right or left fielder. If it's the first number in the flyout range, it's the center fielder. And you look at that fielder's rating, and then you roll to see if it's a home run or flyout based on that. So he could rob the home run. Of course, in order to rob a home run, the height of the wall can't be too high. So later on, when we look at the ballparks, we'll see the designation for fields where home runs can be robbed and fields that you can't rob the home run. You're not going to rob a home run to left field at Fenway Park because they can't jump that high. If the wall is higher than 10 feet, they cannot jump high enough to rob the home run. So just something to keep in mind. All right. Next up, ground ball A, B, and C. Okay. You're going to follow the advanced guidelines, but also add these rules. When there are fewer than 2 out, and there's a runner on second, that runner is going to move to third automatically on a ground ball A or B that's hit to the first baseman or second baseman. So if it's hit to the right side, the runner moves up. Now remember, ground ball C, they move up automatically anyway. So that's why it only applies to A and B. But A and B, they move up if it's hit to the right side. And if there are fewer than 2 outs, and the second baseman and shortstop are back, playing back, if it's a ground ball air B, the runner on third is going to score if it's hit to second base or shortstop if they're playing back. Otherwise, the runner's not going to score if it's hit to first or third or the pitcher when the infield is back. Okay, he's not going to score, but he is going to score if it's hit to second or short. And these only apply to the ground balls on the player cards. They don't apply to the X charts. The X charts have their own runner advancement that we'll look at here in a minute. You can come to this ground ball result chart to get all your ground ball advancement based on whether the infield's back or in and which bases are occupied. So if you have runners on first and second and it's a ground ball A, you look at number 2 and it says double play. Other runners advance one base. If it's first and second and ground ball B, a runner out at second, batter safe, other runners advance one base, right? Ground ball C, batters out, other runners advance one base. So you just kind of cross-reference here with this chart. If you keep this chart handy, of course, after a while, you'll memorize this stuff and you won't have to refer to it, but just something to keep in mind. So the other thing to keep in mind is that outcomes of ground ball A, B, or C, they're all on this chart. But if there's a runner on first or a runner on second or first and second, and the corners are in, and the ball's hit to first and third, first or third, so they're playing in and it's hit to them, you refer to the infield back section to get the play results. And why do you refer to the infield back section if it's hit to fielders who are playing in with runners on first or first and second? Well, because the other possible changes are handled in the X charts and elsewhere. But if it's a normal ground ball A, B, or C, then they're considered back for purposes of the ground ball result chart. Okay? All right, let's talk about the X charts. Let's get to them here. Okay? The main difference between advanced and super advanced is the super advanced, every X chance has not only base hits that can occur, but errors on every single chance. Okay? So every single chance. So let's say it's hit to the left fielder. Or actually, let's say it's hit to the left fielder. You're going to cross-reference the outfielder's range, which is 1 to 5. And you're going to roll the 20-sided die. And that's going to tell you whether there is a base hit on the play or not, based on the range. You're also going to roll all 3 dice, and you're going to cross-reference the E rating of the player, and then see if you roll either a rare play or an error, E1, E2, E3. Okay, so you could have a base hit and an error, or you could have a flyout and an error, or you could have a base hit and no error. All of those possibilities exist based on the E rating of the player and the range rating of the player. And then you'll go to the symbols section and cross-reference whether there was a hit or an out and either the rare plays or the errors in that section to see what happens. Okay, let's look at Lou Gehrig here. I'm going to the first base section. First base section. So Gehrig is a 2E16. So if a ball is hit, a ground ball X chance is hit to first base, ground ball first base X, then he is a 2E16. And you're going to roll a 20-sided die and look at the 2 column. And you'll see that 2-1 or 2-2 are base hits. And then it gets into the outs. And you're going to roll all 3 dice and look at E16. And on first base, E16, there's an error on a 3, 11, 12, 16, or 17. And the 17 is a 2-base error. And 5s are always the rare plays. And so you're going to cross-reference this, and let's say we got a G2, and let's say we got an E1, G2 and E1, and you're going to go to the symbols section, and you're going to go G2, E1, and you're going to see error, batter to first, runners advance 1 base. And also, you'll notice on these charts that, especially in these ground outs for the infield, that whether the infield is normal or in will determine, based on the bases, where how the runners advance, or if there's a double play, etc. So it's all here on the chart. And you'll see on the symbols, you'll read the symbol over here to determine runner advancement. Okay. The other thing to note on here, we'll come back to in a little bit, is the pound sign. The pound sign means that if the infield is in, or that particular infielder is responsible for holding the runner, then the pound sign is going to turn these groundouts into single twos. Single twos. All right. But every position has its own X chart with error ratings and range ratings. The infield all has the same range section and a different error section for each position. The outfield has one range section and a separate error section for left fielders or right fielders or center fielders. And the pitcher and catcher has their own range section and error sections. Okay, so based on what you roll, you're going to cross-reference that in the symbols section and see what the result is. And that's how the X chances are determined. So as I said, you can have a multiple of base hits or errors, or neither, based on what you roll on these charts. Now, a couple of notes. If a PO, that's a pop out. If a PO, here's a pop out. Rare play happens, which is if you roll 5, remember 5 is always the rare play on the 3 dice. It says the batter hits a pop-up. None of the fielders take charge on the play, and the ball drops in for a single. All runners advance 1 base. Okay? However, if there are fewer than 2 out and runners on first and second, or the base is loaded, remember that would be an infield fly. And that's an automatic out, and runners hold. So that would modify that result because it'd be an infield fly instead. All right. The other thing is, let's get back here to the, yes, here's where. So on the infield section, the S1 rare play, let's look at the S1 rare play. With a runner on first, batter hits a line drive, which hits the runner, right? That is modified. Yeah, that can only be used if the ground ball is hit to first or second, right? That's the only time you're going to hit that runner on first. If it's hit to third or short, then it's just going to be a regular old single, and runners advance 1 base because you can't hit that runner. So that's the modifier for this rare play. Likewise, on the catcher chart, the catcher X chart, if you get the PP or PF and no error, then you could have a possible pass ball if you are playing with those rules. Possible pass ball. So that's the other thing to consider. The other thing to note, we talked about cutoff, right? On an F2, which is on the outfield chart, F2, You do not, if there are runners on second and third, you do not subtract 5 from the running rating with the man on second. It's not a cutoff play. So if it's a fly out here, it's not a cutoff play. So you're not subtracting 5 from the running rating of the man on second. You do make all of the other adjustments for throws to third base, but you don't subtract 5 because it's not a true cutoff play. So second and third, F2, the runner on third scores, right? So there's no chance of throwing him out. So that's why it's not a cutoff play. When the runner on second could try to advance, there's no cutoff involved. Okay. All right. What about those ground ball pluses? Remember the ground ball pluses? Well, in the Super Advanced, you only change those to a single with 2 asterisks if the infield is all the way in. If they're playing corners in, you do not change it to a single 2 asterisks. Instead, it is treated as a ground ball as if it didn't have the plus. Because the extra hits with the corners in occur on the Super Advanced fielding chart. Okay, so you don't make that modification. Also, you don't turn it into a single with 2 asterisks if runners are being held on base in the Super Advanced game. Because that is all handled in the stealing holding base runner section. It's not handled with the ground ball pluses. So ground ball pluses only turn into a single with 2 asterisks if the infield is all the way in. Otherwise, they're just a regular ground ball. All right. The other thing is this line out max. I was sure Lou Gehrig had one. I'm sure he does. Just not seeing it offhand. Oh, here it is. 112. Line out second base max. Remember, in the advanced game, that's a triple play if there are 2 runners on. But in the Super Advanced game, it's not automatically a triple play. You roll a 20-sided die, and if it's a 1 to 7, then it's a triple play. But if it's an 8 to 20, it's a double play. The lead runner's doubled off, but that's it. So the fielder catches the ball and doubles off the lead runner, but they don't get the triple play on it. And that's to make the triple play a little bit more realistic in terms of how often it happens. All right. What about injuries? Well, Super Advanced has its own injury section. Here it is. They have their own injury section for Super Advanced. So based on whether it's a batter or pitcher, you're going to roll a 20-sided die, and that's going to tell you the number of games that player is injured. But you'll notice that there are maximum injury limits. So there's asterisks here. And if the batters, you're going to add his at-bats and walks. And based on those totals, you could, if he had more than 600 at-bats and walks, then the maximum injury he can have is a 3. So anything higher than that just stays a 3. Same with starters and relievers based on games started. If they have 20 or 28 games started, then they have a maximum injury amount. Relievers, it's 40 or 60 innings pitched. They have a maximum injury amount. If you roll an REM, that means they're only injured for the remainder of the game only. And if you roll OK in the OK section, they don't have to come out at all. They're fine. So that's the injury differences. All right, so what about sacrifice and squeeze plays? Well, the Super Advanced has their own sacrifice and squeeze charts. Here's a squeeze chart. And you'll notice the manager should call either suicide or safety. Suicide meaning the runner's going no matter what. Safety meaning he's only going once a contact is made on the bunt. Right? If the infield or corners are in, the rating, the bunt rating gets worse by 1. So A becomes a B, B becomes a C, and so on. You're going to roll all 3 dice. The single die determines who's fielding the ball. The 2 dice determine what happens. And here's all of the stuff that could happen on this chart. And then you just look down below and it tells you the descriptions. It tells you all the descriptions for it. Okay. And that's how you do squeeze or sacrifice. So here's a sacrifice bunt chart. Same thing. With the corners or infield in, the bunt rating gets worse. You roll all 3 dice. The single die determines who the fielder is. A 1 or 2, it's the pitcher. 3, catcher. 4 or 5, first base. 6, it's third base. Total the 2 other dice. Consult the chart based on the bunt rating, and that will tell you what happens. Now, in the Super Advanced, you can have a 1 and 2. 1 and 2. That means the pitcher throws a ball and then the batter fouls off 2 pitches. So then the offense has the option of whether to try to take the bunt off or continue to try to bunt. The offense gets that option. But if they do switch, you cannot do a hit and run. So you can't go from a 1 and 2 on the bunt and then decide to hit and run. Okay? You can't switch to a hit and run. But you could take the bunt off and just swing away like normal. Just something to keep in mind. And much like the squeeze in sacrifice, there is a hit and run chart. Okay? Offense decides to hit and run and rolls. Then they're going to roll all 3 dice. If you roll a 1, 2, or 3, you're going to refer to this Super Advanced Hit and Run chart. If you roll a 4, 5, or 6, you're going to read it right off the pitcher's card like you normally would. So the pitcher's card still can come into play on a hit and run. But you're going to change some of the results. So a strikeout, walk, single, or double. Strikeout, walk, single, or double result. Disregard those and refer to these this chart down here. So if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, and let's look at Lou Gehrig again. His hit and run is a D. So you're going to look at the D column. If the corners are in or a runner is being held on base, you improve the hit and run by 1 step. So that D would become a C, for example. Otherwise, you just look at the regular column. You're going to roll all 3 dice, as I said. On a 1, 2, or 3, you're going to add the 2 dice, 2 other dice, and consult this chart to see what happens. BMP, batter misses pitch, and the runner has to steal. So that's something to keep in mind. A leader, the lead runner's out on a ground ball. LODP is a line out to second base, double play. Lead runner's doubled off, right? Now, if you roll that 4, 5, or 6, though, then you look at the pitcher's card. However, strikeouts, walks, singles, or doubles are adjusted based on the batter's hit and run rating. So on a strikeout, instead of a strikeout, it would be batter misses pitch on a C or a D, or a ground ball C on an A or a B hit and run rating. Walks can turn into ground outs or batter misses pitch. Singles are single 2 bases. Doubles are 3 bases. So that's how you handle hit and runs with the charts. Okay, what about infield positioning? Infield positioning. Well, the cool thing with Super Advanced is you can have all sorts of different infield positioning. In Super Advanced, you can have the infield back, the infield in, or just the corners in. Because Super Advanced provides for corners in, for the sack bunt, you can only do infield in, all of the infield in, with a man on third. Okay, otherwise you're doing corners in for the sack bunt. But if there's a man on third, you can choose to do all the infield in. Okay. This result chart you're going to look at, it's going to take the place of the regular A, B, and C, ground ball A, B, and C readings from all of the other charts. This all sums it up based on whether the infield's back or the infield's in. The pitcher and catcher, by the way, on X chances, the pitcher and catcher are considered to be playing back when the rest of the infield's playing back, and they're considered to be playing in when the entire infield is in. Okay, so if the infield's in, then on X chances to the pitcher or catcher, the catcher and pitcher are considered in also. If there is a runner on third, the pitcher is always considered to be playing in on ground balls to him. Okay? Always considered to be playing in with a runner on third. The pitcher is. When you're doing corners in, the pitcher and catcher are considered to be playing in only when there's a runner on third, or when there are runners on second and third. Otherwise, they're considered to be playing back. So they're only considered to be playing in with runner on third or second and third. And again, with the infield in, with the full infield in, all of those ground ball pluses become singles with 2 asterisks. And on the Super Advanced X chart, all of those pound signs become singles, single 2s. All runners advance 2 bases. So that's where the infield in can hurt, is if you get one of those X chances or you get a ground ball plus. Then infield in will hurt you. Whenever you have a runner on base, you can have the corners in, just the corners in, until there are 2 outs. Okay? Because that'll preserve some double play possibilities while limiting the sack bunts. But, as I've said before, with just the corners in, not the whole infield, but just the corners, those ground ball pluses do not turn into single with 2 asterisks. But with corners in, ground balls hit to the first or third baseman, you would use infield in rules. So X chances to first or third with the corners in, those pound signs become the single 2s on the X chart. So going back to the X chart, if it's hit to first base, all these pound signs, if it's first or third, these pound signs become singles if the corners are in. All right, just something to keep in mind. The cool thing, Super Advanced though, you can have any, you can hold any runner or combination of runners can be held on base when the infield is positioned corners in. So you could have corners in and runners being held at the same time. So that's something else to keep in mind. All right. The other thing you can do is you can bring the outfield in. Okay? You can bring the outfield in. And, of course, you're going to use that if the winning run is on third base, there's fewer than 2 outs, and the game could end on a sac fly. You could choose, the defense can choose to bring the outfield in. And in those cases, on a fly ball beat question mark, you're going to subtract 7 from the base runner's speed instead of adding 2. So the normal chart says you add 2, this A plus 2 computation. Instead, you're going to subtract 7. if the outfield is in. But any fly ball A or fly ball B without the question mark turns into a single and the runner is going to score. All right, now we're going to talk about probably one of the more significant changes with Super Advanced, the Super Advanced game, and that is the supplementary stealing system. So I have a catcher card here so we can get catcher's ratings. I have a pitcher card here so we can get hold ratings. I have a Lou Gehrig, of course, for our base runner. And in the Super Advanced game, you do not look at the stealing letter grade. Instead, you're looking at these numbers over here. You're looking at these numbers over here. And so you're going to ignore the letter grade and you're going to focus on the numbers over to the right of that. So basically what these numbers represent are the numbers before the slash indicate when you get a good lead. So you're going to roll two of the six-sided dice, the two six-sided dice. And in Lou Gehrig's case, he gets a good lead if you roll a 4 or a 6. Okay, that's the numbers before the slash. The number after the slash is an automatic out. So in Gehrig's case, if you roll the two six-sided dice and you roll a 12, 6 and a 6, then automatic out. Automatically out stealing. Okay, many base runners won't have an automatic out stealing, but some of them will. So in Gehrig's case, you're going to roll two six-sided dice. If you roll a 4 or a 6, he gets a good lead. If you roll a 12, he is caught stealing. Caught stealing automatically. Okay. You also notice there's an asterisk here in front of these numbers. That asterisk means that if the defense does not hold the base runner, so if the defense decides not to hold Lou Gehrig on first, he automatically gets a good lead. Okay? He automatically gets a good lead. So so that's the danger of not holding somebody like Lou Gehrig, is he's automatically going to get a good lead and he doesn't even have to roll for it. So the other thing I'll mention is that some batters and most pitchers have no number rating for stealing. So if you look at Benji Molina here, he has all dashes. He has all dashes. If these players attempt to steal, they have they begin with a success chance of 0. You're going to make all sorts of adjustments for hold and catcher arm, as you did in the advanced game. And the minimum success is still going to be a 1. So Benji Molina can try to steal, and after all adjustments are made, the least his success number can be is a 1, even though he has no ratings. Okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, some pitchers do have a supplementary stealing rating, and those are going to be listed on the roster sheet. So check the roster sheet. Some pitchers are actually decent at stealing, and so they may actually have numbers. Now, we've talked about the numbers here to the left, and then you'll notice there's a couple of numbers in parentheses. And so those two numbers represent the success chance of stealing. The first number is if you get a good lead, and the second number is if you do not get a good lead. Okay, so in Gehrig's case, if he gets a good lead, he has a 1 to 15 success chance to steal. And if he does not get a good lead, he has a 1 to 6 success chance to steal. The other thing to mention is if you try to get a good lead and you do get a good lead, you have to try to steal immediately. Okay? You'll have to try to steal immediately if you get a good lead. So you don't have to try to get a good lead when you have a player on base. But if you do, and you get that lead, you have to try to steal immediately. All right, so let's talk about the different stealing second, stealing third, stealing home, all that stuff. Well, Here's what you do if you want to steal second base. You're going to combine the catcher arm, which is usually listed in parentheses. In Benji Molina's case, it's a 0. And the pitcher's hold rating, which Lefty Gomez, his hold rating is also a 0. So the catcher's arm can range from -5 to +5. The pitcher's hold rating can range from -6 to +9. So you're going to combine the catcher arm and the hold rating together. You're going to add the two together, but it can't be greater than +5 or less than -5. So in our case, we have a 0 and a 0, so we didn't even have to worry about it. But let's say you had a catcher's arm of -1 and a pitcher's hold of -5. Well, the lowest it can go is -5. So it would be -5 in that case, not -6. And that number is what you would apply to these numbers in parentheses. So Lou Gehrig, if he gets a good lead, he is going to steal on a 1 to 15 if he gets a good lead, modified by the catcher arm and pitcher hold. In our case, Benji Molina and Lefty Gomez both have 0s, so Gehrig would have just the standard 1 to 15. But in our example where the catcher had a -1 arm and the pitcher hold was -5, remember the most the adjustment can be is a -5, then he would only have a 1 to 10 if he got a good lead. And remember, if you get a good lead, you have to try to steal. So you want to calculate this before you roll to see if you get a good lead, because maybe you don't even want to try it. Of course, the defense decides whether to hold the runner on base. So if the runner is being held, there's an additional -2 from the steal success chance if you get a good lead, and an additional -4 from the success chance if you don't get a good lead. So let's say Gehrig is being held on base, and we already said the arm is 0, the hold is 0, so normally it would be a 1 to 15. But if he is being held on base, it's a -2 adjustment to that, so it'd be a 1 to 13. And if he didn't get a good lead, catcher arm 0, hold 0. If he didn't get a good lead and he was being held, that's a -4 from the second number. So that would be a 1 or a 2 only. So something else to keep in mind. And that hold, the effect of holding the runner can exceed the -5 + 5 that we mentioned before, of course. All right. And again, if you have an asterisk, you get a good lead automatically if you're not being held. But if you are being held, you have to roll to see if you get that lead. The other thing to keep in mind, you can only make that attempt to get a good lead basically once while you occupy the same base. So if you're on first base, Lou Gehrig is on first, you only can try to get that good lead once. The only exceptions to that is if, let's say you're being held on base and you don't get the good lead. If the defense decides to stop holding the runner on base, then you get another try at it. The other case where this might come up is if there's a pitching change. And the pitching change is to a pitcher with a worse hold rating, or a catcher, or there's a defensive change and they bring in a catcher with a worse arm. Then the runner, who maybe had attempted and failed to achieve the good lead, could try again. All right, so all things being said, once you find out what that end number is and you either get the lead or you don't, and you decide to steal, you roll the 20-sided die, and if it's within that safe range, you steal the base. If it's outside the safe range, you are caught stealing. If it's a successful steal and the dice roll is a 1, 2, or 3, then there's also a chance of a throwing error by the catcher. And what you do is you'll notice that the catcher has a T range here. Benji Molina's T 1-13. That means if Gehrig is attempting to steal and he rolls a 1, 2, or 3 and he's successful stealing, then what you're going to do is you're going to roll the 20-sided die again, and if it's in that 1-13 range in Benji Molina's case, there is also a throwing error on the throw. So, and if there is a throwing error, then all base runners are going to get an additional base. So that's the other thing to consider. You don't, if you're the defensive manager, you do not have to attempt to throw a runner out. You could just give him the base. And if that happens, obviously you wouldn't have to roll and you wouldn't have to worry about throwing the ball away. But if you try to get that runner out, you do have to, if it's a 1, 2, or 3, you're going to have to roll to see if there's a throwing error. So it's kind of a trade-off. What about stealing third? Well, if you're trying to steal third, you're going to use the second number. So in Gehrig's case, you're using the base 1-6. And of course, if he's being held, you're going to deduct 4 from that rating, just as well as the catcher and pitcher effect, just like you did before. So if you're stealing third, you're going to ignore the first number altogether. You have to get a good lead. And you're going to ignore the asterisk also. You're not going to get an automatic good lead. In order to even attempt to steal third, you have to get a good lead, and you don't get it automatically. You have to get a good lead, and you're still going to use the second number. All right. What about stealing home? What about stealing home? Well, once again, you're going to use that second number, but instead of adjusting for the catcher-pitcher, the catcher arm and the pitcher hold, you're just going to subtract 9, a flat 9 from that second rating. And again, if you're being held on base, you're going to subtract an additional 4. So in Gehrig's case, that's going to take him down to a range where he's automatically going to be out stealing. So once again, and stealing home is the same way as stealing third. You have to get a good lead first. You're still going to use the second number, though, even if you do get the good lead. Double, triple steals, only the lead runner's rating is going to be used. And the defense can only try to throw out the lead runner. The trail runners automatically advance, so there's nothing you can do about that. Remember also the hit and run, where we had a batter misses pitch. If that happens and you have not yet rolled to see if the runner had a good lead or not, then you're gonna roll to see if they get the good lead, making all of the adjustments, and roll based on whether he got a good lead or did not get a good lead. So the hit and run, you're gonna, again, if you haven't already determined the good lead or not, you're gonna do that if the batter misses the pitch and you're forced to steal. If you'd already determined, or you'd already tried to get a good lead, and let's say you failed, you don't get another chance. So you're going to use that second number. And again, if you get that batter misses pitch on a hit and run and you're trying to steal third and you didn't get a good lead, you're just automatically out. So super advanced again, just as a reminder, you can hold runners on base with the infield playing back, and if the corners are in. So if the corners are in, you can still hold runners on base. So if you need to determine which fielder is holding a runner, because remember that affects the X chance charts and all of that, then you're going to look at this little chart, runner being held chart, to determine who is holding. So there's a runner on first, and it's a left-handed batter, the first baseman and shortstop. If it's a right-handed batter, first and second baseman. A runner on second with a left-handed batter, shortstop, runner on second, right-handed batter, second baseman, and a runner on third is the third baseman. And remember, if I guess something to keep in mind, if you have a ground ball X chance to one of the fielders who is holding a runner, you add 1 to the fielder's range rating. So his range rating gets 1 worse. You don't change the error rating, the E rating, but you do change the range rating. Now, you don't raise it higher than 5 because it only goes 1 to 5, but you do increase the range rating. Regardless, you don't get the single with 2 asterisks on ground ball pluses while runners are being held on base. Remember, that is factored into the X charts with the pound symbol. All right. One last thing that probably won't come up that often, but could come up, and that is a delayed steal of home. Delayed steal of home is when you have runners, let's say, on first and third, and you send the runner on first to steal second, and then if the defense throws to try to get that runner out, you try to steal home on the throw to second. So you can do this, but you're not going to roll for a lead. You're going to calculate the safe range for the runner like you would normally, but you're going to use the second steal rating number in parentheses, plus or minus catcher's arm. You're not going to adjust for the pitcher's hold in this case, or you're not going to adjust for the for being held in this case. So again, this happens when there's runners on first and third, and that runner on first is going to use the second number. You're not going to roll for a lead. The second number plus or minus the catcher arm. Not going to factor in hold rating. You're not going to factor in being held on base. Now, if that runner on first attempts to steal, then the defense chooses whether the catcher is going to hold on to the ball and let him steal to make sure the runner on third stays put, or you can try to throw that runner out at second. If you try to throw the runner out at second, then the offense has the choice of whether to have the runner on third try to steal home. And in those cases, you're going to calculate that safe chance by subtracting 5 from the second steal rating. You're not going to adjust for pitcher hold. You're not going to adjust for catcher's arm. You're not going to adjust for being held on base. You're just going to subtract a straight flat 5 from the second number for that runner on third trying to steal home on a throw to second. So then, once you decide that you're going to try to steal home, the defense has a choice again. They can let the throw go through to try to get the runner attempting to steal second, or they can cut the ball off and throw home. After all the decision is made, you're going to roll the 20-sided die and determine, based on who you're throwing to try to get out, whether they're safe or out. And if there's 2 outs, by the way, and the defense throws out that runner going to second, then the runner on third does not score. All right, now there's an optional rule that comes into play also with the supplementary steal system. And, you know, if you're going to play with these super advanced, you might as well use the optional rules too, right? You might as well go all in. But it is an optional rule, and that's pickoffs and balks. And so there is an optional system for pickoffs, balks, pass balls, and pickoffs and balks come up with the supplementary stealing system. So if you use the supplementary steal system that we've been talking about, and you also want to use the optional pickoff and balk rule, which again, if you're going to use super advanced, just go all in on it. Then what you're going to do is you're going to roll a 20-sided die whenever you're trying to get that lead. So you're going to try to get the lead. Let's say Lou Gehrig, he's going to roll his 2 6-sided dice. Well, he's also going to roll the 20-sided die. And on a 3 to 20, everything is just as I've described it so far. But if the 20-sided die roll is a 1, then that runner may be picked off base. And to see if he is, you're going to roll the 20-sided die against the second number. So in Garrick's case, a 1 to 6. Okay? And if you roll less than that, then he dives back safely. But he still has failed to achieve that good lead. If you roll higher than that, then he's picked off. Okay, so again, you're going to roll the 2 6-sided dice to get the lead, and you're going to roll a 20-sided die. And if that 20-sided die roll comes up a 1, you are going to disregard the 2 6-sided dice. You're going to roll the 20-sided die again and compare it to the second number. And that number now is his chance for getting back to the base. He doesn't get a good lead, but he can get back to the base on a 1 to 6. On a 7 to 20, he's picked off. If that 20-sided die roll was a 2, then there's a potential balk. And what you do is you look at the pitcher's card, and there's a balk rating, BK. And Lefty Gomez is 0, so he doesn't balk. But some pitchers have a number here next to the balk. And you're going to roll the 20-sided die roll again. And if the 20-sided die roll is equal to or less than that balk rating, then the pitcher has balked. And all runners advance. If it's higher than the balk rating, then the runner doesn't get a good lead, but he dives back safely, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so again, you're going to roll a 20-sided die when you roll to see if you have a lead. And on a 1, you're going to see if there's a pickoff by comparing to the second steal number here. Roll a 20 and compare it to the second steal number. If it's a 2, you're going to roll against the pitcher's balk rating. Again, that's entirely optional, but again, you might as well do it if you're going to go all in, right? Now, there is also a nice little system for resting batters, and this is good for solo play. Let's look at it here. Solitaire player rest chart. So in order to do this, in order to use this rest chart, basically what you're going to do is you're going to set your starting lineup. You're going to set your starting lineup like normal. You're going to roll a 6-sided die, and you're going to look to see which starters might need to rest. So if you roll the 1, center fielder, third baseman, DH are the 3 starters that might need to rest. And to determine if they need to rest, you're going to add their walks and their at-bats and look at this chart, and you're going to roll a 20-sided die. So if they have more than 600, then they're never going to rest. But if you roll in this range, then that player has to rest that game. Okay. Now, if that player is the last player available, rated to play his position, then you can ignore the rest. And when we're talking about resting, it only means they can't start the game. They can still pinch hit, pinch run, come in late inning for a defensive replacement, or as a substitute in case the starter gets injured, that kind of thing. It just means they can't start the game. All right. What about pitcher endurance, and how is it different in the Super Advanced Game? Well, the Super Advanced Game has a starting pitcher rest chart. And you're going to look at the number of outings, or the number of innings in his previous outing, and that's going to tell you how many days the pitcher has to rest in between starts. And some pitchers have an asterisk, which means they need less rest than pitchers without the asterisk. But you're going to compare the number of innings. So if a pitcher went 7 innings and he has an asterisk, he only needs 3 days of rest. If he didn't have an asterisk, he would need 4. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. If you use a pitcher in relief, he should have at least 1 day of rest before he starts. Otherwise, he's considered fatigued for his entire start. If a pitcher doesn't have a rating as a starter, but he's forced to start a game, then give him a rating or a POW rating of 4, or a POW inning of 4. Okay, the most innings a starter can pitch without fatigue is 11, regardless of anything else. If a starter gives up 5 runs in any one inning, or they give up 6 runs over 2 consecutive innings, or 7 over 3 consecutive innings, then they're fatigued also. That's the other thing to consider. And then all of the readings that have a dot turn into singles with 2 asterisks. So this strikeout on Lefty Gomez would turn into a single with 2 asterisks if he was fatigued. That strikeout would turn into a single with 2 asterisks if he was fatigued. A pitcher that starts a game has to rest as shown on the rest chart before he can start or relieve. If a pitcher does not have a rating as a relief pitcher, give him an inning, one of the power innings of 1. Okay, give him an inning of 1. The most innings a reliever can pitch without fatigue is his POW inning plus 2. POW inning plus 2, and then after that time, automatically fatigued. Likewise, in other relief pitchers, you can't use them on more than 2 straight days. After 2 days, he needs at least a day of rest. Now, if you have a reliever that pitches 2 or more innings above his relief fatigue rating, he also must rest a day before his next appearance. If he pitches 3 or more innings above his relief fatigue rating, then he needs 2 days of rest. So that's something else to consider. And then Super Advanced also has a closer rule that is new. And then each reliever is given a second power rating that's called closer endurance. And you can see it here on Lefty Gomez's card. You see relief 3/0. That 0 is the closer endurance. Now, closer ratings range from 0 to 6. If the pitcher has an N, that means they should not be used as a closer, by the way. And that number represents the number of outs that a pitcher can maintain his effectiveness in closer situations. Now, Strat-O-Matic defines a closer situation a little differently than save opportunity in the big leagues, okay? So in Strat-O-Matic's case, a closer situation is when you have the lead in the ninth inning or later, and the tying run is on base or at bat. It's as simple as that. So it's not the same as the save situations, but it's if you have the lead in the ninth or later, and the tying run is on base or at bat. Then it's considered a closer situation, and you use the second relief number after the slash. The closer rules don't apply to the game's current starting pitchers. So even if they get to a situation that would qualify as a closer situation, it doesn't apply to the starting pitchers. But it does apply to relievers if they enter the game and it wasn't a closer situation and it becomes one. Or I should say, once it's a closer situation and you're using the closer endurance here, you don't go back. You can't go back from that. Now, if a reliever comes in and it turns into a closer situation, you're still going to subtract all of the outs and the number of outs he's already recorded from that closer endurance. But it can't go lower than 0. Okay? So that's something else to keep in mind. And that closer endurance is the number of outs the pitcher can record before becoming fatigued. So if it's a 0, then as soon as he issues a hit or a walk, he's fatigued. So in Lefty Gomez's case, if he is in a closer situation and he relief, then not when he started a game because that doesn't apply, but if he's a reliever and it turns into a closer situation, the second he issues a hit or a walk, he is fatigued. The best closers usually have like a 6 or something like that. So they can do 6 outs, up to 6 outs, before they're going to have to worry about that closer fatigue. And then as soon as they do, they issue a hit or a walk, and then the closer fatigue, or they become fatigued, I should say, and all of those dots turn into singles with 2 asterisks. All right, one other thing to talk about. Remember when we talked about establishing a lead or not, and we rolled a 20-sided die to determine pickoffs or balks. Well, you can also determine balks, wild pitches, and pass balls in the same manner whenever there's a runner on base. So whenever there's a runner on base, this is an additional rule, by the way. Whenever there's a runner on base, in addition to the 3 dice that you're going to roll that 20-sided die also. And much like before on a 3 to 20, then you just read the 3 dice as normal. But if you roll a 1, then the 3 dice you ignore, and a wild pitch may take place. You look at the pitcher's wild pitch, which is WP. In Lefty Gomez's case, it's a 2. And you roll the 20-sided die again, and if it is less than or equal to that number, there's a wild pitch. So in Lefty Gomez's case, if you roll the 3 dice, you roll a 20-sider, and it comes up a 1, you roll the 20-sider again, because it's a wild pitch chance, and if it comes up a 1 or a 2, then there's a wild pitch. If it's 3 to 20, it is not a wild pitch, and you would re-roll all the dice again. If that D20 comes up at 2, then a balk or pass ball may occur. And so you disregard the 3 dice, you take one of the white dice, one of the white 6-sided dice, and you roll, and if it comes up a 1, 2, or 3, it could be a balk, a 4, 5, or 6, it could be a pass ball. Either way, you're going to roll the 20-sided die again, and if it's a balk chance, we're going to look at the balk rating of the pitcher. If it is a pass ball chance, we're going to look at the pass ball rating of the catcher. So Molina has a pass ball of 0, so he's not going to have a pass ball. And Gomez has a 0 balk, so he's not going to have a balk. So if the 2 came up on a 20-sided die and you had these players in, then it's not going to be either one of them because they have a 0 in those cases. But if it's equal to or less than the balk rating or the pass ball rating, based on which one you rolled, then a pass ball or balk would occur. Either way, if that initial D20 comes up a 1 or 2, and you don't have a wild pitch, balk, or pass ball, you still have to re-roll all 3 of the dice to continue play. If a wild pitch, balk, or pass ball did occur, you re-roll the 3 dice and you re-roll the 20-sided die too. So you could have multiple wild pitches or balks or pass balls occur back to back. And you could use these, by the way, the wild pitch ratings may come into play on those X chances, the PP or PF. PP or PF. Well, here's PP. There we go. So PP, if you have the PP come up on the catcher, right, and you don't have an error, it says here, when using the balk, wild pitch, or pass ball rules, you're going to roll that 20-sided die to determine if the pass ball occurs. And if it doesn't, then it's a pop-out. So those could come up if you're using those rules on the fielding charts. All right, folks, we're in the home stretch. It's been a lot of detail, right? A lot of detail. Let us talk about weather and ballpark effects and clutch hitting. Okay? These are all optional, I guess. But again, if you're going to use the Super Advanced, you might as well just go all in. And there are a couple of different ways you could play it. You could just play with ballpark effects. And in that case, the ballpark effects would come up if you have a triangle, a down triangle, like 1-3 on Gehrig's card, or a diamond, like a 1-7 on Gehrig's card. On the down triangle, or inverted triangle, those are ballpark single chances. And based on the ballpark, let's say it's Baltimore, and based on whether you have a left or right-handed batter up, so Gehrig is a lefty, if he's playing in Baltimore, and he's a lefty, and one of these down inverted triangles comes up, instead of reading the result off the card, you're going to look at the ballpark range here. And so Gehrig would have a single on a 1-10 or a line out to second on an 11-20. Now, if he rolled the ballpark homer chance, again, and he's a lefty, you would disregard what's on his card, and you instead look at the ballpark effect here, and he would have a home run on a 1-12 or a fly ball right field B on a 13-20. And if you're going to use these, you should use the clutch too, because they're all meant to be used together. They're all meant to be used together. So that's how you read these charts. Now, the clutch hitting occurs when you have the horseshoe. So on a 3-12 on Gehrig's card, he has a single. Now, if there are 2 outs and 1 or more runners in scoring position, then it's considered a clutch situation. And if you roll something that has the horseshoe, the results are reversed. So any single with 2 asterisks becomes a pop out. And any pop out becomes a single with 2 asterisks. Or if it's any type of out, I guess it becomes a single with 2 asterisks. So Gehrig had the horseshoe on his single, which would become a pop out in this case instead. Let's see Benji Molina. Is he clutch? Where's his clutch? Nope, his is also on a single, so that single becomes a pop out. If this horseshoe had been on an out, the out would turn into a single with 2 asterisks. So that's how that's determined. The other thing, if you're playing with these rules, is you notice that there's a little triangle that's not filled in, like 2-4 on Gehrig's card here. If you're playing with the ballpark and the clutch and all of that, then you're going to play with this triangle symbol too, because they're all meant to be used together. And in that case, you're going to ignore the first result to the right of the triangle, and you're going to look to the split result below it. Use the second reading in italics instead of the first reading. So instead of a fly ball right field B question mark for Gehrig, it's going to be a single 1-5 or a line out to second base 6-20. Okay, so those come into play when you're using all of this other stuff. Finally, if you want to even get even more, you could use weather too. Let's go down to the weather and see what the weather's all about. Oh, by the way, remember I talked about robbing home runs? See these asterisks next to the teams? The asterisk to the left of the team name means that you cannot rob home runs for lefty batters. And the asterisk to the right of the team name means you cannot rob home runs for righty batters. So that occurs anytime you have a home run fly out split, not just the ballpark home run chances, So remember, let's look at San Francisco, 1-3 home run, fly ball, right field B, 4-20. If you rolled a 3 or a 4, you could rob a home run, but you actually can't in San Francisco because the walls are too high and there's an asterisk. In Washington, you could, for righty batters, you could rob home runs, but not lefty batters. So just another thing to keep in mind. And finally, weather. So if ballparks alone don't do it for you, you could factor in the weather. And the weather replaces the ballpark effects that we just saw before. Okay? Instead of those ballpark effects we saw before, what you're going to do at the beginning of a game is whatever home ballpark you're in, let's say Baltimore, you're going to look at the month and whether it's a day or a night game, and you're going to roll a 20-sided die, and that's going to tell you whether the weather is good, average, or bad. And based on that, you have different single and home run split chances. So that gives you even another factor to consider. And again, ballpark singles turn into lineouts. It's either a single or a lineout, and it's second or short based on whether it's a left-handed or right-handed batter. Ballpark home runs outs are fly ball right field Bs or fly ball left field Bs, depending on whether it's a left-handed or right-handed batter. All right, folks. That's it. This is a long video. There's a lot of little fiddly details. I tried to cover them as much as I could. Yeah, a lot of stuff there. But that's Strat-O-Matic Super Advanced. If you're going to play with that, you might as well play with all the options. That's what I say. But that's Strat-O-Matic Super Advanced. So we're going to end things here. Hopefully you learned something from this. There are a lot of things to keep in mind and consider. That's for sure with the Super Advanced game. But like anything else, the more you play in that way, the easier it will get to remember some of this stuff. There are a lot of things. What I've often done is I've reread rule books. I'll read the rule book, I'll play for a while, and then I'll reread the rule book. And oftentimes what happens is I'll find rules that I forgot about that I haven't been using. At the end of the day, it's at your table. So you could choose to play any way you want. And if you mess up a rule here or there, it's probably not that big of a deal. But if you want to play with all of those detailed rules, then hopefully you have learned something today. That's where we'll leave things. And I think this is going to be the last of my videos for a while on how to play. But if you enjoyed this, consider clicking the like button. Leave some comments down below if I missed anything. There's a lot here, so there's a good chance I did. Or I misspoke about something. There's a good chance of it. So leave those comments down below, and until next time, have a great evening.